Well, happy that you can be with us this evening. We welcome those of you joining us on the live stream as well tonight to listen and learn of the experience that Arnie and Judy had as they served for 3 years on the Apache Indian Reservation at East Fork Lutheran School, and learn more about the ministry that continues to go on there on our behalf. It's a ministry that we are all part of, and what a blessing that they were able to go and use their time. We're going to open with prayer. You'll see a link in the chat window if you're joining us online. I'd encourage you to sign in just so we know who joined us tonight. Those of you who are here, the door offering is being collected in the box out front. Those of you joining us online, if you want to go to the goodshep.com/give tonight or later this weekend or over the next 2 Sundays yet, encourage you to do that as well. Goodshep.com/give, and you'll see a drop down in the other category there. You can make your contribution using the missions box out of that, or the missions portion there in the other, and we'll make sure that money that comes in between now and the first Sunday in October is sent off to East Fork Lutheran School as well, as a way to support their ministry. With that, we'll open with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you for the privilege of partnering in the gospel ministry you've entrusted to us and to all Christians. And what a blessing for us to be able to carry that gospel to places like the Apache Indian Reservation and share that good news with a people so lost without it. We thank you also for the willingness of Arnie and Judy to go there for 3 years and devote their time to teaching the children of the school and to serving our mission there, bringing the gospel to the people. We ask that you'd continue to bless Arnie and Judy, bless the mission at East Fork as well, and all our work on the Apache Indian Reservation to bring that good news, that changes hearts and changes lives. It's a challenge, as it is anywhere, but especially there. And so we ask tonight that you would just continue to bless all those who are serving, continuing to serve, and to bring that good news to the people in East Fork and on the Apache Reservation. Be with us, strengthen us, motivate us tonight to use our gifts to serve you. In Jesus' name, amen. With that, I'll invite Arnie and Judy to come forward. They're going to walk you through the rest of the evening. I'm just going to give Arnie this mic back.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. It's good to see some of you that we haven't seen each other in ages, but good to be here. Thanks for taking time out of your lives to come and learn a little more about East Fork and the Apache Reservation. For starters, some people wonder where it is. Most people know it's in Arizona, but if you look on the screen, you can see the little black spot there, which is the Apache Reservation. Who's got the clicker?
No.
Pastor, we lost the clicker.
Right here.
Oh, thank you. So you can see it was about 3 hours northeast of Phoenix, which we went to a few times in our 3 years there. And 6 hours to the Grand Canyon, you said?
Yeah,
right?
6, so about 5 to Flagstaff.
Which we also got to visit while we were there. Got to see a lot of the state while we were there because we always had a week off in fall. Fall break was 1 week, and spring break was a week off in March.
Because school started the first week of August there.
Right. Okay, so there are 2 Apache tribes on the Arizona Apache Reservation. We were in the north one, the White Mountain Apache tribe, also called Fort Apache, which was a fort back in the 1800s. Still is where the post office is, where we had to go 4 miles from where East Fork was. We'd go every few days. We didn't have to go every day to get our mail. So the fort is still like a small version of Fort Snelling, you might say. Has some old buildings that are, one is a museum and one is the post office, and there is a school there too. All right, so 2 million acres, it says, is the northern reservation, about 14,000 Apache people. We have 6 Wells churches in the northern reservation. We sort of have one Lutheran high school. Unfortunately, they temporarily, hopefully temporarily, closed it this fall due to a couple reasons. So they're saying they're closing it for 1 year and it will reopen next fall. So we hope and pray that's true and that will happen. The reason they closed it, partly COVID, partly low enrollment. The enrollment never took off like we all hoped it would in the high school. And partly a teacher. We only had 1 or 2 called teachers for the high school. The other 4 or so were volunteers like we were. So the one decided he came last year. We didn't really know him and his wife. They came when we left. So, and they put in a year and then decided it wasn't for them. So in June, they decided to resign and go back to Wisconsin. And then the one Lutheran elementary school, of course, is still there too.
Judy,
Yes.
can we ask a question?
Sure, yeah, I'm sorry.
So do some of the students go to ALA, Arizona, if they have the funds?
1 or 2
Yeah.
have gone there, yeah.
Yeah. I only knew one, right? Just the Apache pastor in White River, he sent his son there. And I was a little sad about that because the first year we were there, his son was an 8th grader, one of my piano students. And the second year we were there, we hoped they would support the high school, that just recently reopened, but they sent him down to ALA. So, okay, any other questions before we move on? Okay, now the southern reservation, which we are not as familiar with, that was a 2.5 hour drive from where we were through some very windy roads and mountainous area.
Salt River Canyon.
Kind of a dangerous
And then the
drive.
Salt River separates the northern and southern reservations.
And you see there, that's about 1.8 million acres, 13,000 Apache, 3 Wells churches down there, 1 school at Peridot. We have a school there that's doing quite well too. And here you can see on the map where they are, our churches, the 3 in the south and the 6 in the north there. 1 in Cedar Creek. So White River is like 5 miles from where we were at East Fork. So we were on the campus at East Fork. White River is about 5 miles away. Then Canyon Day was about 5 miles the other direction. So the pastor at East Fork has a dual parish, so he's pastor of both East Fork and Canyon Day. So it'd be 8 o'clock service at Canyon Day, 9:45 service on Sundays at East Fork. And then White River had its own church. That was the biggest one on I think, both reservations.
Yeah,
Right.
probably.
And then McNary and Cedar Creek were sometimes just called a preaching station. So they didn't have their own pastor. The 3 or 4 pastors would take turns rotating there, going later on Sunday mornings or Sunday afternoons. Sibique had their own pastor, and and then there's 2 in the southern reservation, had their own. Oh, at one time I was going to say there were 4 schools back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s maybe, grade schools, Lutheran elementary schools, and now there's just 2. So Sibique used to have a school. Arnie had some classmates that taught there, I guess,
Yeah.
right? And who else?
Bylaws.
Bylas had a school, right, in the southern res. Okay.
Now both schools are growing because Arizona has what's called ESA. It's a scholarship/voucher program, and because of the poverty and all the other factors, the Apache people are not required to prove that the school they're going to is failing in order to get a voucher like you would if you were in Phoenix, let's say. Your school has to be failing, but they just figure among the Apaches that, we'll let them get the best education that they possibly can, so.
Another thing up on the map there we didn't mention is the Apache Christian Training School, which is called ACTS, A-C-T-S. And you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, well, that program was to train the Native American members to be evangelists and eventually, in connection with the seminary, to become pastors. But they offer classes for, any of the Apache, male or female, to become, stronger in their teaching of the word. And the director was a missionary in Africa, and he decided, I guess, that the Apache reservation wasn't isolated enough for him, so he took a call back to Africa again. So that director position there is currently open.
And it was currently open when we went there, too. So the pastor, Howard Mulkey, who was the director of the ACTS program, was not there but 3 years?
Yeah, he
2
was
years,
there
3 years.
2.5
So that
3
seems
years.
to be a position that's hard to keep filled. Therefore, it's hard to get that program going. And I only know of 2 Apaches that have actually gone through the program and became pastors, and one who became
An evangelist.
well, 2, I guess, became evangelists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so any questions about the ACTS program? All right, here's a little bit about the history. So when we were there, the fall of 2018, the mission celebrated its 125th anniversary, very big celebration. For years, the Joint Synod wanted to do foreign mission work. It was a long-awaited time, a new beginning, and exciting. By 1892, Arizona had come a long way, had railroads, no Lutherans, so the Synod agreed, we will send missionaries to the Apache in Arizona. 20 years later, Arizona became a state, and it was considered inhospitable, heat, desert, cactus, and Indians. And here is where it started, at Peridot. So all the while, I thought the mission started up where we were at East Fork in the north, and really it started down at Peridot because that's where there was a railroad went through there. The railroad tracks went there. So, and that's where our 125th anniversary was held, too, down in Peridot.
There's still a congregation there in Fairdown?
And school.
Yeah, and a school.
Yep. Then in 1893, finally, the Wells came. 2 seminary men were assigned there, George Adashek and John Plucker, I think is how they say, or Plucker, in San Carlos, 1893. And Gary, didn't you say that this Plucker's granddaughter spoke at the Owls Convention in last October? Or there was a presentation on, right? Is that right? Okay, you told me there was we weren't at that Owls Convention, but you said there was a presentation about the mission, and it was given by some granddaughter of a missionary. Okay, so some famous names you hear about. Chief Casador welcomed the missionaries and sold 10 acres of land in Peridot, Arizona, to the Wisconsin Synod, which is where the school is now. And what did Plucker do there? He was invited to instruct 110 Apache children 2 times a week at the government schoolhouse, teach them religion. The mission work of sharing God's grace had begun. So that's our humble beginnings. Okay, now what does it look like today? There's one of the Apache ministers. This is Gary Lupe. He is the pastor at Sibique, which was about 30 miles from us, from East Fork. So it says that we had 3,600 members, baptized members, 8 congregations, 1 preaching station. I guess that would be Cedar Creek. 2 Lutheran schools, 1 evangelist, 5 missionaries, 17 teachers, 2 national pastors. That would be 2 Apache pastors, Gary Lupe and
Kirk
Massey. And then 60 in the Bible Institute students, which I am surprised at that number.
Well, they might be having classes down on the southern res that we didn't know about too. But
Yeah.
we went to a few ACTS classes. They were wonderful.
They were
Even
more-
learned a little Apache in those classes. Very little.
What Apache did you learn?
Well, one lady told me, if I say this to you, I'm calling you a bad name, so I won't ever say that to you. That was what I learned there.
The one Apache word I thought I learned was dogata, something like that. And when I'd say that to the kids at school, they would just laugh at me. And I said, well, that's how you say it. No, we say dogata. And I said, well, I said dogata.
So,
and that just means hello.
and the other one is, it's like wuji, which is what you say to a dog to get it to go away.
A lot of dogs roam the campus and horses. Okay. And here's the other pastor.
So the gentleman on the right is Kirk Massey. He is pastor at White River, which is the largest, town on the Southern Reservation. And that church is the largest. It's a very old church. We'll show a picture later. And this is the installation of what I would call our pastor, because we were sort of members. We kept our membership
No, we were
here.
never members there. We were only members here.
Yeah, and one of the chairmen of the school board asked me why. I didn't really have
why we weren't members down
a
at
good
that church.
answer, but the man with the colored stole is Pastor Dave Bosted, and he's now in his 3rd year there. He came from Torrance, California.
Yep, he came our 2nd year there.
2nd year there, so yeah, he would be in his 3rd or 4th year.
Okay.
And they have the website called nativechristians.org, where they talk about the things that they're doing in the ministry. They formed that for the 125th anniversary, and now they've kept that website going as a way for people who aren't there to see what the mission work is involved. And one of the goals of the Apache people in our churches is to eventually reach out and go to other Native American reservations where the gospel hasn't been effectively or preached yet at all.
Anywhere in the country.
Anywhere in the country. So they were talking about perhaps going to South Dakota and I think maybe Idaho or somewhere to reach out with the gospel to sort of, further the spread of the gospel among the Native American peoples.
So you can check out that site, nativechristians.org, if you like. Okay, now our part here.
Okay.
How did we get there?
So one day back in 2016, I was riding home on the bus, reading Forward in Christ on my tablet, and all at once I saw this ad that said, we'd like volunteers to come to East Fork, Arizona, to help out in the high school program because they weren't at a point where they could financially call teachers, so they were asking for volunteers. So I went home and I said, did you see this? And she said, no.
What she said is, do you think we could do this? And I
Yeah.
go, what?
So then we called the principal of the schools, and I knew him vaguely because he was a couple of years behind me in school. And we told him what our qualifications were and then he said, okay, well, do you know anything about computers? And I said, well, not much. No, actually,
No, he didn't say that.
I didn't say that really. But, and then she told him she taught music and
And he said, wow, because the piano teacher we had just got sick and had to go back. That she's been coming down here every year for I don't know how many years, and now she just left, had to go back to Michigan because of illness. So that would be great timing that you could just take her spot there, and you could work with computers, set up a computer lab, right?
Yeah, there's a gentleman who has a ministry. It's kind of winding down now, but he recycles older computers and then gives them to WELS churches or schools. And so he had sent some down, and then we took some that we had up here that we weren't using, and so we took those down, and then I had to set up the computer lab there. In the first year, just teach keyboarding, but more on that later.
Okay, so
then when we decided to go, we needed to go at the end of July because school started the first full week of August. So we packed up our van with as much as we could get in it.
and
then
10 computers.
10 computers or so. And then we headed down through Wichita, Kansas, and then we cut over through Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. And eventually we got close and we stopped in Eager, Arizona, and Springerville. They're kind of a twin communities there, where we have a WELS church. And we stopped at the gas station or whatever and asked them, where would I turn to get to East Fork? And the lady said, well, you go to Honda and you take a left on Highway 73 and you'll get there. So I'm looking for a car dealership all the while, but no, Honda means welcome in Apache, and this is what Honda is. It's
casino?
It's a casino, convention center, convenience store, powwow area. I guess it's about everything. Hotel. But that is where you turn left. It's just not a car dealership. And then the slide that she showed you, go back to this one. When you turn left at Honda, this is what you see. This is not cactus. This is not desert.
Doesn't it look like
Minnesota?
Minnesota?
This is not any of that. This is northern Minnesota.
Or Wisconsin.
Or northern Wisconsin. The elevation probably at that turn is probably about 6,200 feet. So at that turn. Mm-hmm. And so when we went to get stuff, we always had to go up the hill. Because now when we go this way, we're going to go downhill into White River.
And this is the largest stand of ponderosa pines in the state or the country?
In the country, maybe in the country. And one of the teachers at East Fork in the elementary school was actually the forest whatever officer or helped with the forest management. So this is like very important to the economy, industry, the area. So they manage that area pretty well.
Okay, moving on. So then we get a little closer. We get finally into the little town of White River. They don't put population on their signs. They just put when it was founded, 1896, does it say? Mm-hmm. And the elevation, 5,290 feet. So that's where we were. So you see a little snow in the winter, nothing at all like Phoenix. You know, we had a couple inches of snow. Well, the first 2 winters, not as much. Third winter, we had more snow that actually stayed for a week, maybe, or more.
Maybe in the shady spots a week. But.
Yeah. So mild winters, very nice. Usually 40s. January is the coldest month. All right, and then as we're driving into town, they do have a hospital in there, kind of a new one, called the White River Indian Hospital, which we would not be able to go to unless we were on dying. It was only for the Apache people, even though it would be the closest hospital for us. And one of the volunteers was in a car accident once, and it wasn't too severe, but she was taken there. I was surprised. They did take her to this hospital, even though she was white. So... And then here is our one, the biggest church, our WELS church in the town of White River, called Church of the Open Bible. in White River, and this was before it was painted. It got a nice paint job one summer when we came back, and look, oh, it's all nice and new looking. So this church was founded in 1911, I think. Let me check.
I thought it was 12.
Let me check my notes. Oh, no, 1920. And it was given to missionary Gunther is a very famous name because he was there for many years, and then his son was a missionary there for many years. So there are people there who still will talk about the Gunthers. Well, the first missionary Gunther, when he was there, got to know the chief Apache, the Apache chief, very well. And they had a very close connection. There's something about their son, too.
Yeah.
Chief. Anyhow, Chief Apache gave the Wisconsin Synod, or the missionary Gunther, this land here to build a church on. And Easter Sunday, wasn't Chief Apache baptized in that church when it was built in 1920? So,
I think so.
and we think that one of the chief's great-grandsons went to our school, because we did have a 4th grader or 5th grader in our school whose last name was Alchese too.
Talon was his first name.
Yeah, Talon Alchese.
Talon Alchese.
So there are no chiefs anymore now that's the tribal council, right?
Well, they elect it's a chairman, I guess.
Chairman, yeah.
Chairman of their council they elect.
So Chief Alchese was the last Apache chief, I believe. Yes?
Am I thinking of someone else, or was Gunther part of getting the Apache language into a written form?
I think that was him.
Yeah,
Yes.
I believe
The
that was
first Gunther,
Gunther.
yes?
Writing the Apache language then.
Mm-hmm, right.
And that was one of our Welsh pastors that did that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Could you kind of summarize that for the live stream, the questions?
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. The question was missionary Gunther one of the men who helped put the Apache language in written form? And he did that. Okay, thank you, Evan. I didn't realize that. Okay, so that's White River. So then we go like 5 miles down the road, and then we see this sign, a little sign for our school, East Fork Lutheran School and Mission.
Before you see this sign, though, you see one that says East Fork and corn on the cob. And we met and were pretty good friends with Flora Cobb. And the reason it's called corn on the cob is because they raised corn on their farm. The Cobbs did. So it's called corn on the cob.
So there are little burgs around White River. There was Turkey Creek a few miles that way, and 7 Mile. It was another little burg all around the area, and corn on the cob was one. Okay, so we turn here and then go a few feet, and then we get to our school. Beautiful sign there. This was the theme for the year. We are God's masterpiece that year. And we finally reached the campus. It had a cattle grate when you drive in, and it didn't keep the horses off the property, though. I don't know how they got in usually, but they always got in.
There was a person gate next to it, and that got left open a lot.
Leave the gate open, yeah. Okay, so beautiful school, beautiful school. This school actually was, well, the school itself was started in 1911, but the first building burned down in 1987. And so this, or 86 or 87, this one was built in 1987. It has 12 classrooms, a nice library, and a beautiful gym. When we were there, enrollment was about 180 kids. That would be from kindergarten through 12th grade, the last year, give or take. Yep. So the high school had closed in 2008 for financial reasons, and then they tried to reopen it in 2015, the year before we got there. So when the first year, the high school opened with one called teacher and a volunteer or 2 or 3. I don't know what they had the first year, but they only had 5 students, and that would be in just 9th grade. So then when we came, then there was 9th and 10th grade, and then we had about 12 students.
Yeah.
So we thought we're making good progress, right? Then the next year, our second year there, we had 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, and we were up to about 25, 26 students. And then our third year there, we didn't get any more students. And then we started losing students in the high school. I'm just talking now, not the grade school. And we lost students. I think the main reason is sports. Because the public school in town was bigger, had a bigger sports team, and every Apache kid wants to play basketball.
They went to state 2 years or 3 years in a row, so then
Now you mean
the
East?
public school.
Okay.
And so our teams, we couldn't even play varsity sports because there weren't any schools that small around us. So sadly, the parents chose to send their children to the public school rather than to our school.
So it was really sad to see the enrollment go down instead of go up, because the principal, Daryl Doberpool, and the school board worked so hard to get it open, by having volunteers get it started. And then hearing that it closed this year was really heartbreaking. Okay, so that's the school. Let's look inside the school. So here was Arnie's first classroom.
Actually, it was my classroom all 3 years. So when I got there, we had DSL internet that maxed out at 5 megabits per second, which meant, quite simply, that you could not have more than about 3 people online at any one time, if you were lucky. So one of my first tasks was to finalize a contract with Frontier to provide us what's called Ethernet over copper. So we basically had 6 phone lines coming in to provide reliable and stable internet. And I had to wire there's about 7 or 8 buildings on campus, and they all had to be wired for either wireless connectivity or wired connectivity. So that was pretty much what I did my first year. And then also as part of that, the grade school kids came in, and so I ended up working with most of the grade school kids, K through 4 the first year, and then, 1 to 4, and then 1 to 8 the next year. The second year I taught algebra, religion, and computing, and then I had, again, all of the 1 through 8 grade school kids every afternoon for computer instruction. And then the last year I taught algebra and computer and had all the kids again. The principal wanted to teach the religion class because he didn't have any other classes. Our last year there, the principal was transitioning out, and they had already called another man to be the principal, but they sort of did it together to transition, and so the principal, Daryl,
stepped down from 7th and 8th grade.
Right.
And just was principal, and then the assistant principal taught 7th and 8th grade, and
well,
then took
8th grade.
8th grade, that's right.
Yeah,
and then took over as principal last year when we left.
Yeah, when we first came, it was, 1 teacher for 2 grades, but we grew so fast that by the end of our 3 years there, they had 1 teacher for every grade.
In the grade
That's
school.
how fast the school grew in those 2 years while we were there.
Okay. So here's their beautiful gym. When I walked in that gym, I tell you, my mouth just dropped open. I couldn't believe how big and beautiful it was. So they are the East Fork Eagles, and on the wall back there it says the passage. What does it exactly say?
I forget.
Man.
Soar as on
Soar
wings.
as on eagle's wings, yeah. All right. And then this was the cafeteria and stage. So in the way back is the kitchen, and then the kids would eat lunch here in the cafeteria. On your right was the stage. So the first year, the stage was just a stage, right? The first year?
Yeah.
Then the second year, because they added another teacher, needed another classroom, I made it into, it eventually, the first year it had to be also where the kids came to practice piano at recess. So I had 3 keyboards up there that they could come with their headphones. Because when I gave piano lessons, most of the kids had no piano or keyboard at home, only like 2 or 3 out of the 24. So they had to practice twice a week at recess, and I'd supervise that. So that was what the stage was used for the first year. And then the next year, I taught a math class up there, and 1st through 4th grade music I taught the second year on the stage. Then it became kind of a classroom. And then the 3rd year, the library had to move out because they added another teacher, so then we moved the whole library to the stage there, and then the library became the 2nd grade classroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Let's just talk about, go
Oops,
back
sorry.
to that one. So, because of the great facilities that they had there, East Fork hosted basketball tournaments a lot. And so it was all hands on deck. So we would have to serve in the canteen there, selling different things. One of the things, of course, Apache food is called fry bread. I don't know if you've ever had it, but the Navajo make it, and so do the Apache. And pumpkin pie on fry bread wasn't the best, but other than that, I loved it. And they'd
had
make these
pumpkin pie.
hamburgers that were about a meal for 3 with fry bread
and Indian tacos.
and Indian
So-
tacos they'd make with fry bread as well. And then some things were a little surprising, like at these basketball tournaments, we would literally get these 3 or 4 gallon pails of pickles.
5, more like 5.
5
or
gallon
more.
pails of pickles, you know, about that big pickle. And we'd run out at the end of the,
Big dill pickles was the hottest selling item at the
that,
canteen.
and then when those ran out, then it was red vines. I don't know, you know, red licorice, they call them red vines down there. We'd sell those like crazy. And Dr. Pepper seemed to be what most of the kids like to drink.
Okay, so just a few feet away from the school were these 6 apartments. So the first year we lived on the second from the left door there, that was ours. And then the other volunteer teacher was on the very left end one, and that couple only stayed 1 year. So when they moved out, we decided we liked that end one because then you have air from 2 directions, right? You have windows on 2 sides instead of just 1. So the last 2 years we lived in the end apartment. And first year, 2 of them were empty, and but by the end they all were full. And here's what the inside looked like. We had a kitchen, it was nice. Nothing special.
Go back.
Living
You
room. Oh, what?
didn't- Okay.
Did you miss something? What?
Well, it's a little
living room?
wider than she went from a square frame to a wide frame, so it was,
Here's
the
living room.
refrigerator wasn't 40 inches wide.
So the thing next to the couch there, that white little thing that looks like some kind of...
Like
what-
R2-D2.
that's it. Is an air conditioner. So we did use an air conditioner probably for the month of August. Got very hot in the afternoons, the daytime, and very hot in the classrooms. There's no air conditioning in the school at all. Well, oh yeah, then the first year when he set up that computer lab, well then he goes to the principal and says,
Equipment is overheating, especially with these 7th and 8th grade big boys in here.
we gotta have air conditioning
have
in the
air
computer
conditioning.
lab. So he got a window air conditioning in his room. Nobody else had any in the classrooms. But we did have them in our apartments, and we did use it. But never at night, never in the morning, always cooled down, you could always open the windows by evening.
Yeah, usually when the
beautiful.
sun went down, again, because the air is dry, there's nothing to hold the heat in, so it evaporates. I mean, it probably dropped 15 to 20 degrees every night between, say, 7 o'clock and 9.
Yep. Okay, so there's the church, maybe 100 feet. So our apartment was just off to the edge of this picture, and here was the church. So there were 6 houses on the campus. We counted, right?
Yeah.
And then the Axe building, where that used to be the orphanage back in the 50s and 60s. And they made that.
70s too.
Okay, I guess, yeah, the early 70s is when the orphanage closed, I think. So, so that building now is used for Acts Bible studies. And then there's another building, you can just see a little bit of it next to the church. That's their fellowship hall. It used to be the girls' dorm when they had high school back in the 80s and 90s. They had 2 dorms on the campus, a girls' dorm and a boys' dorm, which is still at the end of the campus there too, but condemned, in bad repair. They boarded up the windows finally because people would be breaking them coming on campus and whatever. So finally they boarded up the windows, and I don't know if it could ever be repaired and used again if they needed it.
Those of you who are familiar with, the old East Fork where the orphanage was still there, maybe no one ever told you the story of why we started an orphanage there. It was because in the Apache tradition, twins were a bad thing. So what they would do is they would pick one twin to leave out in the desert. And so then when one of the pastors became aware of that, then that was the impetus for starting the orphanage, to save those children from,
And
death.
if there was anything wrong with them, wasn't there the story we read that one baby was born with 6 fingers, and so obviously that was a curse from their gods or whatever, and so they wanted nothing to do with that child. So missionary just cut off one finger and said that this child was just fine, and they, at the orphanage, of course, took this child in then. And so they have a lot of superstitions, the Apache people. Is that all I was going to say about that? Orphanage, okay. And just a little ways off our campus is this beautiful red rock. And the first week we were there, one of the teachers said, "Do you want to climb up to the top of Red Rock?" And we said, I don't know, do you think we can? "Oh yeah, my parents did it when they were here, so I think you can do it too." So we did. It was a hike. We got up there and you could see for miles. So the people in this picture over on the left was the 1st and 2nd grade teacher, Ruth Vogt, and her husband was the 5th and 6th grade teacher when we first came. The girl in front was Anna. Well, she's now married. Now I don't remember Ryman now. She lived in one of the apartments, but she actually was working for Builders, Kingdom Workers, not Builders for Christ.
I think she organized evangelism trips or whatever, or camp around the Apache res there, getting people interested in evangelism.
And then the other couple was another volunteer couple who did maintenance work and lived in one of the apartments 2 of the years we were there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then in spring, the high school teacher put this on the sign. So I had 24 students in piano that year, from grades 3 to 9, I think, the first year. And so we had to have a recital, right? And here they are, some of them, 20 of the 24. So that was fun. Some gifted kids there. And then at the end of the school year, we took a field trip to Phoenix. And because I had taught music to the 9th graders that first year, we decided our field trip we'd go down to this musical instrument museum in Phoenix. And we spent, well, it's a 3-hour drive there, so we spent a few hours there. It was a long day, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
And now I
the
can't.
guy with the white
Shorts
and the black top next to the kid with the red hat, his name is Paul Krause, and he was one of the called teachers there at...
Well, the only called high school teacher.
Yeah, the only called high school teacher at East Fork. Mm-hmm. If any of you ever get to Phoenix, and they're not paying me to say this, but if you have a day to spare, the Musical Instrument Museum is something that you really shouldn't miss. It traces the history of music from, way back, prehistoric days, all the way up to the present time.
And from every country in the world.
Yeah, every country in the world. It's a huge building, and you won't get through it. And we were there 4 hours, and I had to really push the kids, I think, to see everything.
So they had a piano in the entryway too, a grand piano, I think it was, in this museum when you walk in. And the boy on the far right was one of my piano students, though he liked to just play what he liked to play. He liked to download stuff off the internet and play these songs. But he sat down at that piano and just played, out of the top of his head, just played some songs that he learned and taught himself. And all the kids had no idea that Sean could do that. And they were just amazed that Sean could sit down. Did you hear how he could play? Yeah, he was great. Okay, so is there still a need on the Apache Res? Look at the challenges and hopelessness. This is where we come in, guys. Generational poverty, more than 3 generations, is rampant. 80% are unemployed. Over 50% of homes have alcoholism issues. Single mothers are the norm. Marriage is not important. Traditional religion is a strong force for all and breeds fear. So a lot of work yet to be done there. There are a lot of faithful, wonderful Christians who have been there and have been raised for generations. There are grandparents there who went to the grade school back in the 50s, and their parents went there. So there are some good, solid Christians on this reservation, but there are a lot of their kids that are not. And they really struggle with, if only my son would quit drinking, one lady would tell me, oh, if he'd only stay out of jail. And
yeah, it was a very hard for them, and of course in some ways it's generational pervasive racism there, and it's probably worse than some of the African Americans feel in our major cities, simply because the Apache cannot own their own property. So therefore, if they wish to start a business, they have no way to get capital by mortgaging their assets because they can't own any assets.
the land all belongs to the tribe.
Right, and they do receive an allowance. I don't know what that is, but of course, to hear some of the members talk about it, the government is corrupt, and so the things aren't evenly and fairly distributed there. So it's a very difficult life that they have there. And what's kind of further complicating it nowadays is that, the government wants everybody to be, feel comfortable with whatever, so you're not forced to speak English like, when we all were, wherever we came from. Maybe our grandparents, maybe.
Right.
And so then that is encouraging to some of the Apache to try to bring back the native or, native worship of,
Preserve
God.
your heritage.
Preserve your
and
heritage.
that's great until
Until there's a there's a ceremony that it's called a sunrise dance, and this is to celebrate a girl's becoming a woman. So at about age 13, confirmation age, they are given this ceremony where they dance all night or something, and then they become a goddess during part of this ceremony, and there's all these, like an eagle feather and all these things that are symbolic of something, and you have to hire these dancers to come and bless the ceremony or whatever, and these people shell out thousands of dollars. In fact, some of them probably spend a year's income on this one, particular event, and it's becoming a problem among our churches because we kind of didn't actively preach against it because for years because our pastors weren't enough well versed in Apache to know what actually was going on, that it wasn't just some, like the state fair dancers or something like that. It was actually a religious ceremony. And then when our two pastors, Pastor Massey and Pastor Lupi, graduated from seminary, they went to, the other pastors and they said, this is what they're saying in Apache, and here's what it means. And then, of course, that stirred up a big, controversy.
And the two Apache pastors said, we got to speak against this firmly. That you can't just overlook these traditions are really it and wrong. So
Right.
that's caused a lot of trouble in families now and divisions
And it was such a serious problem that they drafted a resolution for the church councils of all the churches,
the Wells churches.
the Wells churches there, and a couple of the councilmen at East Fork refused to sign it.
And it said what? That they were not
They
going
were condemning the sunrise,
service,
dance
and they were
as-
not to attend it or support it in
Right.
any way, right?
And there were a
And a
couple
lot of them
council
couldn't sign
members,
that.
they wouldn't sign it. So
it's hard.
there's a lot of work for the pastors to do there, a lot of work for us to do, and a lot of prayers to be said.
One thing it doesn't say up there is suicide is pretty high. In the 3 little years we were there, I bet no one directly that we knew directly, but friends and relatives of students in our school, we must have known at least, 4 or 5 suicides we heard of in the 3 years we were there, at least, and probably more. Okay, so what can I do? Pray daily for more Apaches to know their Savior, for East Fork School to grow and the high school to reopen. Talk about East Fork missions to friends and family. That's why we invited you here tonight. And go to the website for more ways to help or to give gifts of money too. And here's the last picture, right? There was a picture of the whole school of East Fork in the gym. Not that you can see it too well, and there's some websites to check out, eastforkschool.com. They were big on Facebook. One of the 6th grade teacher, when we were there, really put lots of stuff on Facebook and on the website all the time, pictures. He's not there anymore. He took a call to California last year, so I see that nobody's really updating their information on their website. But there are videos on there of when we were there. You can find our picture on there. I think we were still listed as being one of the faculty there on staff. And there's videos of our hand chime choir. I did direct a hand chime choir 2 years and a high school choir 2 years. And so there's a video of that and other things, kids singing in chapel and stuff. So, all right, any other questions? Yes, Warren.
So this is going to come across as a stereotype, and I don't mean it to be that way.
Okay.
So a lot of reservations have gone the route of casinos.
Oh, yes, casinos. Yes.
For money.
Yes. You saw the one.
Oh, okay.
And there are,
Do people benefit? Does the tribe benefit from that?
here's what we were told. We did know one lady, there were some parents or grandparents that worked at the casino. And yes, and they're supposed to get money, right? It's supposed to be distributed to all of the tribe. And one lady told us,
No. It's supposed, but again,
because she says the tribal council are crooked and they are not honest. They are dishonest people. And so that's what we were told.
so that chairman retired the last year we were there, and they elected a woman chairman, so maybe things have changed.
Yeah.
The other big source of revenue that the tribe has, at least the northern tribe has, is there's a ski resort that they run. What's it called again? Sunrise Ski Resort, and that's also a big source of revenue for the tribe when it snows. What?
Are jobs available then, or not really?
Not much. No.
You know, they can go up to Sholo, which is where we would go to do our shopping, which was kind of right on the edge of where the casino was, just a few miles down the road from that. So there are a few maybe that had jobs up there. I don't know, it's a town of about how big is Sholo?
20,000, I think.
20,000. They had a hospital and grocery stores and a few other stores there. Not real big.
And
So some people work there.
Favorite sermon topic of Gary Lupe, Walmart.
Walmart's there.
He'd have that every other sermon. He'd have Walmart in there.
He was so funny. Yeah, he was a great guy. What else I was going to say? Some people worked at the schools with the school system in White River. Where else did they work? There was a logging industry or a mill in town.
I think that declined in 2008, and they were getting it back up in operation, mostly making poles, telephone poles or utility poles. And then they would finish them there, and then they would send them about 25 miles to Eager to be treated, because they don't use creosote anymore.
Pastor.
20 years ago, LHSA High School in White River had a very prominent basketball player.
Oh, yeah.
Prominent basketball coach.
Yeah, Kareem coached there. They still talk about that to this day.
Kareem, who? Abdul-Jabbar?
Yeah, apparently
I did not know that. Coached at
he
LHSA?
was experimenting with wacky tobacco, and he got sentenced to do community service there. So he.
Really?
You didn't know that?
No. Wow.
She didn't talk to many of the basketball players, I guess, like I did.
Not at LHSA, no.
They all the kids talked about that at.
Ron.
Just want to mention my connection.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We would go visit Ron's uncle several times in the cemetery there. Go ahead. You have an uncle who was a missionary there, and his name again was?
Back in, I guess, 40s and 50s,
Yep.
he's buried there.
Yes.
His wife. They had 4 sons. One married an Apache lady, and I think one of their kids is still involved with church. One interesting fact was when his wife, they lived on, what was it, Carlos Reservation?
San Carlos, the Southern Reservation, yeah.
She died young, and they kicked him out because he was white.
Ah. Yes, we worked with an Esther Springler, and I asked, she did not know you, and you did not know her either, but you are related distantly. She was like the special ed teacher, worked with reading with the younger kids. Wonderful lady.
Yeah, and we had at our high school, we had a couple of kids who came up from the Southern Reservation to go to high school there, even though he didn't have a dorm.
They lived with relatives.
They lived with relatives
somewhere.
there, and one of them was Nevaeh Casador, who is, I believe, related to
that
Chief
Chief Casador.
So both of the chiefs had sort of relations in our schools there.
So it was a wonderful opportunity, a real blessing, and God just took care of everything. We wondered what would happen to our house up here if we went down there, and you guys know that He took care of that and found people to live in our house, and everything was fine. And now we're back. And we really planned to go in May to Arizona for their high school graduation. But as all graduations, were canceled this year, they also did not have one, because the first year we were there, those kids were freshmen, and now they were graduating, so we were kind of close with those 5 or 6 kids and really wanted to come back for their graduation, but that didn't happen. But we still will go back to visit someday. Okay, Warren first.
One last one for me here. Is there something that jumps out, or that you would say is a common need across the ministries there? Is there anything that's a common need? I'm sure money is a common need, but anything,
Money.
Equipment, things like that.
Well, a lot of churches support East Fork. There are some churches in Wisconsin that every year faithfully would send backpacks filled with school supplies to the kids, for the kids every year. What else? Christmas, some churches would send gifts for the kids every year. The thing that comes to mind to me was my greatest whatever it was, the parking lot is in poor shape, and I wanted to get it yeah. Oh, theirs is much worse.
Yeah.
Much worse. It doesn't have holes in their parking lot. It's practically all gravel. It used to be wonderful blacktop, and it's not. And I really wanted to raise money to get that parking lot done, and then when they told me it would be about
250 to
Oh, I thought-
300,000.
300,000.
It's bigger than both of ours put together, so.
But that's where the kids play too, where the basketball hoops are, and then it's, but I don't know. So that's a need, but I don't know other
Well,
needs.
and I'm not sure that, the synod would even necessarily approve of that. They do occasionally, they'll bring in crushed blacktop to try to, pack it down and get it a little bit better. But yeah, maybe it's that way so the kids don't hurt their knees.
It's worse to fall on gravel,
East
isn't
Fork's campus is open to the public 24/7. But there's nothing quite like getting up in the morning and open your curtain and seeing the backside of a horse this far from your window. Because what happened that time that happened was we had gone to Phoenix, and we came back from Phoenix, and it had snowed a little bit there, so they had put salt on the road. And so then when we wiped our feet at the door, the horses came up to lick the salt off of the welcome mat. That's why he was...
And one of the teacher's cars, he had salt on the side of his van, and the next morning it was all licked clean.
Oh, it's
from
all
the
licked.
horse.
What are those swirls on his car? And that was where the horse had licked off the
yeah.
salt. I mean, it's just, you look back on it now and you think, well, that was a little strange at that particular time, but it was just part of the whole experience of getting to know a different culture and a different way of living that you just never experienced before.
Pastor.
Thank you both for a wonderful summary, not only of your time there, but of our joint effort there at the Synod. It's certainly worth. I've been privileged to be there a couple of different times on the reservation, both when I vicared and also I had a trip out there as a classmate who was there. But if you're in the area, Phoenix, Flagstaff, and you have a day to make a trip, it is worth
Visit.
seeing and appreciating the ministry. When you get there, as beautiful as that first picture you showed us was, you do realize why it's a world mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You highlighted the different cultures.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it is a totally different culture.
Mhm.
You see that
Mhm.
driving in before you get into the town.
Right. Definitely a different culture, yep. There was a small grocery store in the town of White River, and we didn't go there often. There'd always be people there begging, asking for money. So it was hard to go there sometimes. And there's always wild dogs running around there too in the parking lot.
Res dogs,
Res
they're
dogs
called.
are everywhere.
And, our Pastor Bosted, he actually contracted Rocky Mountain spotted fever when he was there. And Rocky Mountain spotted fever is the ticks or whatever that cause that are not native to Arizona, but they are native to the Apache reservation because of the dogs being able to run at random, so to speak.
So he almost lost some toes and part of his foot. And it was bad. He couldn't walk or wear shoes for close to a year, huh?
Yeah,
6
and
months at least.
his goal was to give communion to the confirmation class, and that was going to be
stand.
the first time he would be standing up for probably, I don't know how many months,
At least 6.
at least 6 months, and then he kind of had a relapse after that a little bit because he came back too soon, but
But he's better now. He's fine now. We do keep in touch with some of the people on Facebook, some of the students too. see their remarks and hear about them. And Pastor Bostedt posts a lot. He loves to cook, so he always has recipes on Facebook. So, all right, well, it's been over an hour, so thank you so much. Keep this mission in your prayers. Yes, if you ever get to Arizona, it's never on the way to anything. It's in the middle of nowhere. You know, I wanted to get our own children to come visit us while we were there, and it's like, okay, well, Mom, I think we could come. I could fly in. Where's the nearest airport? Well, it's 3 hours away, and Phoenix would be the main airport, and then 3 hours, so they never came.
They do have an airport in Sholo, and I
Tiny
guess they do fly from Phoenix, but
Yeah, once a day, I don't
you
know,
know, if
once
the
a
rubber
week.
band breaks, then that flight gets canceled. So
Yeah. So, all right, thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Goes up here.
Hey guys, would there be some value in making this PowerPoint into a PDF and making it maybe available on our website?
I think
Evan?
Did you record it, Evan?
So,
We can make the
peop-
whole thing available.
so people will be able to go to our website and hear this, what we did here tonight? Or not?
It will be on YouTube and Facebook.
Okay. Just like our sermons are, you mean? Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Pastor.
You had mentioned about a free will
Yes.
offering. Does that go to Good Shepherd or does it go to the Apache East Fork? What is your preference? If you're writing
What?
a check. If you write
Oh, if you write a check, Pastor. Barb. But.
We've got online giving coming in for that as well, so if you make it a Good Shepherd, we'll send one.
Thanks to the
Thank you very much.
congregation for making it.
Yes.